Gila ya, nobarnya subuh-subuh anjing. Maaf ya guys ya, nobarnya subuh-subuh. Wush, 6-2 langsung di shop jadi sih. Galau dia mau ngambil apa? Caitlynnya sakit banget.
You have the Ziggs, you have the Caitlyn.
Ya.
Well, and what's great about Dishtop's board is he has so much immense damage on this board.
Maaf ya guys ya.
And the frontline items make his Zac very tanky for the first few seconds of combat. But you have so much damage that's all that really matters, is that your frontline doesn't evaporate immediately. And so you've got Crown Guard and even Shroud giving, you know, additional stats in the first start of combat, a big shield at the start of combat, and that combines together, gives you just a little bit of time, and Dishtop's backline is able to do the rest. And we're going to see Weijin here on potentially 1 life. Does have this upgrade to Kiana, which I think has really elevated the center reroll board, made it more than even a top 4 potentially. But the big thing that Weijin's people have been using the center reroll for is its consistency in making top 4. So Weijin's job is done. He'll see how many placements he can try and scrounge. And beating Weird is the first step as he goes up against this Jazz board.
Yeah, it's a good matchup right now. Weird has not popped Last Stand yet, so he has not reached his final form. On the other hand, Weijin is really strong, but what he actually wants is to be able to try and reach level 9, try and get the 6 true damage in, even without Last Stand, though.
Hitnya Miss Fortune, dan masih ada.
Going out and forth, man.
Masih ada Last Stand loh.
Was just praying to have 1 or 2 more HP. If he could get that 6 true damage, that might have actually tipped the scales in his favor.
Yeah, and we just saw Dishtop pick up a Jhin 2, and that's going to have to try and contend with this incredibly strong Jazz board that we have going on. And I mean, this is really cool to see because this Jazz board was the strongest comp at like this very beginning of set 10. It just like got a bunch of nerfs because this was like way too good for so long, and then it just kind of disappeared. We'd occasionally see it pop back up with like a Bard board or something like that. But now Weird just saw a spot and said, you know what, this is a great game for me to play Miss Fortune. Went for heroic grab bag, so really committing early on to playing this reroll line, and it's paid dividends. This is a top 3, and this is showing how Weird has been able to be one of the top 4 players after day 1. This is going to be the Last Stand pop, but honestly, top 3 with your Jazz board, I'm pretty sure that's like what you're playing for. You're playing for a top 4 with this reroll comp.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Jazz can have a top 1, top 2 finish, but I don't think that the conditions we saw from Weird are exactly that. You know, typically it's going to be around that infinite scaling of the even though it was able to hit really fast and ahead of the standard cadence of the lobby, you are playing, you know, at some economy down because you have the lesser champion duplicators. He does have Last Stand. I mentioned it before though. I'm not entirely convinced that the value gained from this augment is going to be enough. However, he might be able to just beat replay anyway, because there's a lot of single target damage on Weird's board. Being able to get rid of that Echo very early into the fight means that you can have access to the Ahri, access to the Seraphine, and it's not Ahri 2 yet, so the damage is not quite there on replay's board.
Yeah, it's going to be fighting the Ghost initially, so that should... I think Weird should be able to clean that up, and we'll see if Replay can stand to Dishtop, because right now, Dishtop has run away with this game. He played a brilliant 80 flex line, and it doesn't feel like anyone is close to his power level. The Akali is doing some really good dashes for Replay, but it is just that these gloves Akali, the items aren't perfect. Looks like she does get to the back line, but not in time. The Jin just going to clean everything up, and Dish Soap is really just walking away. I don't think anyone can contend with this. We'll see if the last stand makes a difference, but realistically, just solid play out of Dish Soap, making a statement here in game number 1.
Yeah, I mean,
Diambil
Dish Soap
Ezreal
most
sama
likely gonna run
Ahrinya.
away with this. It's very hard to see either one of these boards beating his, especially now with the Jin 2. But we can see right now, Weird is going to be playing replay.
Dia nggak pengen
And in that
jadi,
last
guys.
fight, although it was the Ghost, Weird absolutely dominated the fight. I'm curious to see if replay is able to get the RE2 online. Maybe there's some positioning things to try and get the MF away from the important priority targets early into the fight. But personally, I think Weird's going to take this one.
Yeah, here we go. We've got the fight. I mean, the Seraphine has fallen off quite a bit. It is that late part of the game, and there's been no other major upgrades to come through. So really, this just might be the end of the road for her. You've got the Misfortune chewing through that Echo. He gets an additional cast. He's lived for quite some time, but finally he falls in the back line. Still relatively untouched. Seraphine cannot get through MF's health.
One more
That's
cast?
going to be too much. Replay going to go down, and that's going to be a third
Bishop
for
sih yang
Replay.
menang
Weird
sih
moves into
biasanya.
second, and Dish just has to find one more fight to get a first place in this game.
You have to feel great if you are Weird right now. This was a brilliantly played line, playing the ahead of tempo last stand game, right? Weird did essentially what Kiyun wanted to do. Kiyun made the assumption, hey, I have Yasuo 3, it's 3 items
Boardnya
itemized,
Bishop
I can
strong
streak through
banget.
stage 3. But he didn't. He lost 2 of his next 3 rounds. Weird, on the other hand, was able to find the 3-star MF extremely early, have a very high tempo board, and didn't even utilize last stand until halfway through stage 6. Because of that, the extra life
Anjing,
gets him
Eloy-nya
additional
diambil, Cok.
placement, and now finds himself in the top
Jinnya
2.
diambil.
One more fight to go, though.
Wah,
Maybe there's a world
gila.
where something can happen for Weird, but this feels like a victory lap for Dish Soap.
Yeah, we'll see really how this MF can kind of punch through. It's a third item for a Lucian too, which is not irrelevant. So we'll see if that can actually make a difference. I mean, the Lucian can utilize, some of the stats from last stand, but realistically, the backline axis doesn't really exist from Dish Soap. It's more so just he destroys your front line and then destroys your backline. So the extra Omnivamp isn't going to make much of a difference. As we see this fight come through, Tentacle being the first target, if they can get through the Alawi before too much value is gained from that, that would be great. But Misfortune just dying to Lucian on the other side. And now it's finally the last few fights. We get the Edge of Night pop, and there goes the Jin. Dish Soap with still half his life remaining, able to find first place in game number 1 of day 2 of the North American Regional Finals.
Gila rapi
Man,
banget
a
Bishop.
good showing from the big 3 here, right? Setsuko unfortunately falling in 8th, but Dish Soap in first place. We are taking second. Replay and Weijin rounding out the top 4. This feels like a statement to the day. We talked about the fact that these 4 players are the ones who do not go 8th. Setsuko unfortunately not playing to that statistic, but that is the way it goes, right? In the top 4 made up of 3 of them feels very poetic as for the main characters of the regional finals.
Of course, and Replay continuing that dominance, right? A third place is phenomenal, and I think a player that we need to keep our eyes on is maybe the newcomer, the rising star is going to be Weird, who top 4 on day 1 and starting the day off with the second place. But we are going to send it to a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have the analyst desk break that all down for you. Don't go anywhere.
Ntar ya guys ya, gue mute dulu ya. Keadaannya copyright. Aduh. Sayang ya di Indo Nusantara Open juaranya nggak dapat slot ke Worlds-nya.
넘쳐 흘러물 드는 buffet 죽여주잖아 like a buffet.
Emang kayak Soju gagal guys. Coba gua cek ya.
To walk through the action that we had for that very first game. And wow, there's a lot to talk about here. I'll just start out by saying that.
Yeah.
It was oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was about to say, like, I think like the reason why is because I think a lot of the stuff that we had in that pre-show ended up coming to fruition when it came to this lobby. We saw the reroll and we saw the forecast, ending up winning the lobby, right? So just to put it into perspective, we had reroll go on 6 boards: Cat, Seraphine, Senna, Riven, and Misfortune, and all of them hit and none of them won. Right, and a couple of them actually ended up in 7th place themselves. So, for example, the Cat reroll, which I think
mereka
is
cuma
something I
ngamanin
feel
slot
like we're
doang sih
probably
menurut
going to
gua,
see a little
Sena.
bit less of, even though
Sena
Malal was
3,
kind of cooking
Yasuo
there with
3,
Twin Terror,
Seraphim
Katarina. But
3.
it kind of just goes to show, like, when the power of reroll is going to be strong, it's going to be at the beginning. It's going to push you into those top 2 categories, but getting that victory over a capped, 4-cost carry, capped Heartsteel board after cash out, or AD flex, it's going to be super, super tough. And we're going to be tracking that interaction throughout the rest of today because it's not always going to be the 4-cost winning out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it was really interesting, right? There were 6 rerollers, and they were sandwiched by people not playing reroll, right? Last place was Setsuko playing, full Heartsteel. First place was Dish Soap, who was playing some Heartsteel and actually, made it work. Ended up getting, 4-cost carry with his headliner, but he also had a full legendary board practically by the end and was playing around Jazz and whatnot. We had, Malala go out in 7th. We had Kyung go out in 6th playing Yasuo reroll. Then all these other rerollers that you were talking about, kind of just splashed throughout the lobby. And it just felt like a very high roll lobby for the most part. Pretty much everyone hit. And I think that really contributed to the downfall of Setsuko in this one because he got 5 Heartsteel online so early, had already had all the other units, then actually hit the headliner Aphelios, and I thought he had just basically won the lobby, right? Like he got it online, it was, I don't know, 2-5, 2-6 or whatever. He had 5 Heartsteel. He goes to raise the stakes. When he finally gets that cash out, which was a massive one, he got a Radiant Hurricane plus another completed item and maybe a little bit of gold on top. I can't remember. But from that spot, he had 35 health, and his board looked more than strong enough, I thought, to be able to kind of, get him through that stage and be able to get to 8, then roll down to 8 and probably stabilize. But the problem was everyone had kind of already hit. So his first round after the cash out, he plays against Cat 3, Twin Terror, loses immediately. Then we didn't actually get to see his next 2 rounds on stream, but like everyone was already hitting their 3 stars. So very likely he's just running in a 3-star after 3-star after 3-star, doesn't actually get a chance to get that 4-cost headliner and stabilize with the really good items that he had. So a bit of a tragic game for him, but it just shows that there is a lot of risk in playing these Heartsteel lines, especially the raise the stakes lines, if you're playing in a really strong lobby, right? And you have to kind of track the tempo of that lobby, and it just kind of seems like it ramped up too fast for Setsuko, and it kind of got out of control.
Yeah, if y'all need a little visual, imagine going into the hyperbolic time chamber, training for
Tetsuko
hundreds of years, coming
and
out and realizing
Kion
everyone
and
looks exactly like you
Kesoju
now, right?
in
And
a
it's like
worse
all that work, all
position.
that
Mila
setup,
Lasso. Oh
unfortunately,
my
isn't going to
god.
pay off. So unfortunate for Setsuko
6
because I
game
think
ya.
if you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's, that should, conceivably bring you there. But the lobby just said no.
Yeah, I mean, scouting's going to be super important to make sure you're also not playing a contested line so that everybody was able to actually get all of those boards up and running. Taking a look at our standings, though, this is a big surprise, honestly. Like, to see, we already saw what happened to Setsuko and Malala, but to see, like, Soju, even, like, Robin songs in the bottom 4 here is kind of strange.
Yeah. I mean, it is just going to be really tough lobbies. That's the reality. Robin Songs, with 4 points, so he finished in 5th. Not that bad, obviously, but the reality is you have to be playing really consistently, really at a high level, especially in the lobby that we're watching. The lobby is just ridiculous. It's so stacked. I think 4 arguably of the biggest favorites for the entire event are all in that one lobby, right? So it doesn't really take much to go wrong to be able to actually pick up a 7th, an 8th, a 6th, whatever. These players, though, who did have that rough first game are going to have to really hope that they can bounce back quickly. Otherwise, they're going to have to start really playing a bit more risky and playing only for those very top spots. So it's definitely tough, and it can happen to anyone. I mean, we saw it happen to Setsuko. It definitely can happen to any of these players. Malala as well, finishing pretty low. These are 2 guys who have been crushing it this set.
And on the flip side of things too, look at some of the consistency that we have for a couple of our players that have some of the highest average placements so far. I'm really looking at the fact that Rain and Weird are able to get those second places in their lobbies respectively, because that's just going to help build that up, right? They were already sitting at around a 3 for AVP, so anything that you can get above that is going to help, and that honestly makes things so exciting. This next game is going to be really important.
Also, worrying trend for replay gets a 3rd, so the average placement crashing.
Anything,
it's
it's crazy, right? Anything under a 1st would have brought it down. Right? Isn't that crazy?
He's falling off.
Yeah. Also, Rain getting 2nd is also contextually important because Rain does really well when they start off in those kinds of places. So I'm, again, kind of piggybacking off everyone. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, so I definitely can't wait. We're just about ready to get into the action. So we are going to hand it back over to our incredible casters, Casanova and Gangly, to bring us through the second game.
All right, when it rains, it pours. Gangly and Rainplosion back on top, getting a 2nd in that first game. I'm really excited to be watching her in this next game here, because we are jumping lobbies over to the other side, and we'll get to see kind of what was happening over there. And Rain being able to pick up that 2nd place was huge. Kaiwing grabbing that 1st, and actually Rain had talked about how she and Kaiwing had talked a little bit going into the tournament and maybe done some prep together, so seeing success for both of them is really cool.
Yeah, I think where the other lobby was kind of made up entirely of this gigantic star power, we have a lot of interesting, maybe albeit smaller stories going on in Lobby B right now. The players that I have my eye on, though, I really love that we get to see both K3 Soju
Oh, ini lobbynya ke Soju ya?
playing in this lobby
lobby
together.
utama.
We talked about at the top of the show,
Lobby
2
2 ini.
primary study groups who
Bukan
have been
Setsuko.
competing for the top spots.
Stand on
10
it.
of them. Oh man, wait.
Wandering Trainer, stand on it.
There's
Come
no way
on.
we actually
Wandering
get
Trainer,
Wandering
kah?
Trainer on game 2, right?
Ah,
Nah. Wow, Treasure Armory. I actually almost never see people take Treasure
Come
Armory.
on. We could have been
Big
Wandering
shame.
Trainer, Gangly. It could have been Wandering Trainer. We had 3 people stand on it, and we didn't get it. The other was multi-talented. We actually got the worst one.
Yeah, we did. It's like the least spicy, and also you have to wait so long till you actually get to see it. So Treasure Armory is going to be towards
Soju
the
main
end
apa
of,
ya,
after
guys?
stage 4. You will have a Treasure Armory that is a throwback to
Let's see ya,
set
kayak
7,
Soju
right?
main apa?
Dragonlance.
Dragons. Yeah, it was the Dragon
yeah.
Horde.
Yep. Where players will get an influx of resources that they can re-roll and spend their money to get what they want, or they can take the first thing. It's going to be an influx of resources towards the end of stage 4. But I wanted to, while we're starting on Degree, this is a player that I think flies under the radar for a lot of people. And I think it's worth noting, this is by far Degree's best set of TFT. You might remember Degree from back in, interestingly enough, set 7, where they went 2nd place in the Dragon Cup, the final cup of the set, went to regionals, but since that 2nd place, they've never placed top 8. They've been kind of I know, not even kind of. They've been very inconsistent since that. They've made it to final day sometimes, then they'll get day one in the next tournament. This
Yok
time
ne?
around, though, Degree's putting themselves in a really good spot. They have a sub 4 average placement across the entirety of set 10. Obviously, they're here in the second day. By far, Degree's rising star performance, we're seeing it right here. Hope to see that through the rest of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see that success from Degree. Another player who's kind of just been in that, you know, tier 2, tier 3 players for quite some time. He's always somebody who's like, okay, if he does well, it's not the biggest shock in the world, but it's also just like, it's not expected. And now actually having a set with consistent results is very exciting. As we jump on board with Rain. Rain gonna grab Salvage Bin. We've seen this actually been a pretty popular augment kind of across the board. I think a lot of players are just valuing being able to slam early items, save HP, and then pivot into a strong board late game and build out best in slot. And I think that, you know, Salvage Bin just allows you to do that with ease, right? You can actually just slam all of your items all the time and then turn it into exactly what you want in the late stages. And Rain gonna do just that, but ended up passing on an Olaf headliner and is playing around this Lulu. And I think that was the most interesting part of this is, you know, none of the items were screaming Olaf, but just in general, that unit has been good for win streaking in the early game, and just gonna pass that up and instead go play around this Lilia and look potentially for a super fan opener.
Yeah, definitely not the strongest early game, especially you have to assume other players. Yeah, like we're seeing right now, the Olaf alongside the Superfan opener from Degree. This matchup in particular, it actually might be okay because you have a decent amount of single target damage of the Bard alongside the CC of the Lulu. But yeah, even with that, Degree's just going to have a much stronger early game. I don't think Rain's going to be trying to contest too much board strength up front. I think instead we may see her try to stabilize a little bit more on stage 3, maybe make a 3-2 transition alongside the Salvage Bin like you called out, and maybe utilize some of the lost streak economy to put herself in a better spot later on where she can slingshot her way back into the standings.
All right. Speaking of the Olaf earlier and the way that people just use this early game, we've got another, yet another board. It's going to be Kai Wing playing around that, and support cash actually picked up. This is not an augment we've seen a ton of. Support items, like they kind of had this day where everyone wanted support items. They were trying to get as many support items as they could, and more recently we've seen a lot less of it, where stationary support used to be just an auto click, whereas now it's kind of few and far between that we see this. And this just, you know, I'm wondering if Kai Wing selections were just not that good early game, or if this is something that he's maybe been valuing that other players are not.
Wow, I see on the other side of the board. Yeah, that is a Riven 2. So Biri took the heroic grab bag, the double lesser duplicators, and used one of them. From what I can tell, it looks like she used one duplicator to make Riven 2 early, maybe trying to play Riven from ahead. This is a unit that you normally don't just automatically play Riven when you get Riven plate dropped from an orb. However, if you have the opportunity to both make Econ and make Riven 2 on 2-1, 2-2, maybe this is the way to play Riven from stage 2. We normally don't see that unless you're trying to play some sort of open fort Riven straight into the 3-5 roll down.
Is this something that Krone and I really believe in? Krone and I have talked about this line a lot, where if you're dropped a double 3 cost, that is like a reroll 3 cost line, and then you're offered heroic at the start on 2-1, just taking heroic, slamming the first one and holding the second one is just an incredibly strong way to play into that reroll line. You're already committed to your line, you know what you're playing, you have the 2-star already, so even if you don't full win streak, you'll probably full win streak, but even if you don't, you'll have a very strong board early on. You're not going to lose too much HP, and then you can just build into your composition, econ a lot harder, and greed out even more for the comp. So I like it quite a bit that Biri went that way, and I think she will be rewarded. She stayed on level 3 to make more money, even though she could have tried to level and look for win streak, and I think that is an interesting decision, but I think that it makes sense because the Riven item was Giant Slayer, so you're actually not guaranteed to be that strong.
All right, taking a look at Robin's board, does have this Vi headliner, which is very strong on stage 2. One of the reasons it's especially strong, as we're seeing it right now, is how well it does into the Olaf, who is considered by many to be one of the strongest stage 2 headliners. So if you can play some sort of direct counter to that, like the Vi, then you can put yourself in a really strong spot to maybe not full streak through stage 2, but certainly pick up wins. And with all the streak changes that came in set 10, being able to find early wins in stage 2 is the best way to jumpstart your economy.
And we've got Carousel coming through. Nothing too of note on the early carousel. We didn't see any spots that were specifically screaming for a single item. And so just kind of taking stock of what's happened in the early stages, right? We have 2 win streakers at 100, Kaiwing and Degree, who will be looking to win streak all the way through Krugs. And then Berry is on the loss streak, but I'm not sure that she's committed to that. I wouldn't be surprised to see her flip this loss streak early because of the fact that she was playing around Riven 2. And we're looking at Ripple's board. He's got Metabolic, so he's going
Ini
to
bakal main disco deh. Ripa bakal main
the
disco deh
game
kayaknya.
entirely. And he's going to go to level 5 pretty early on here on 2-5.
Yeah, he has the early Cassante. I'm going to
Dan
assume
dia
that he
berharap
finds that
si
Cassante
Bartnya
before he
itu
takes
ngeluarin
Metabolic,
duit.
and then says, you know, surely I'm going to hit a Heartsteel unit early on. But unfortunately, even with the carousel, does not have Heartsteel online and is in a weird place right now where you're kind of playing around this Nami that is kind of strong. Like, you have damage, but it's not going to be able to contend with the strongest boards in the lobby. However, it's another one of those units that is good into the single target melee units like this Olaf. So there's a world where now, even looking at it, there's just too much HP. Yeah, even with the matchup being decent for Nami, this is a weird spot for Ripple, to be honest. I'm really not in love with this. You have the Metabolic, but you're not making super great econ, and you don't have Heartsteel online, so it feels like you are getting the lower value iteration of Metabolic.
Yeah, I'm also just kind of looking at this like, how is Berry losing so hard with a Riven 2?
Yeah,
like what is it? Did she bench it to keep loss streak or something? Because now look, Rain selling board, Rain contesting Berry's loss streak to go for 5 loss. So is Berry like trying to bench Riven? I mean, Berry definitely cannot contest Rain if Rain wants to lose. It's just not possible. You're not gonna spend half of your augment on this Riven 2 and then sell it. It's just not like a real thing.
Berry did scout it, so Berry is aware of the fact that Rain is half open here. We'll see if they fight each other. No.
Ripple Overdrive Highwing though. That's the other one to watch, right? Is that gonna be
true?
Who keeps the win streak?
Rain
will keep the loss streak guaranteed.
Jual boardnya kan?
And try and move over to Degree.
Double stun
Highwing, and we'll see which one of them, if the flames pop up, as Berry has kept the loss streak as well. We'll just wait and see. I mean, Rain, of course, lost this fight.
Ripple does get Heartsteel online now, so a little bit later, obviously, but having that in before stage 3 does feel decent. Degree able to keep his streak. Kaiwing as well. They dodge each other. 200 streakers going into stage 2 or going into stage 3.
Keluar tuh damage-nya tapi kenen.
All right, so Rain playing towards Senna reroll, it looks like, for sure.
Yeah, quite nice too, right? Like being able to play the Rabadons, Nashers, or have the Morellos as well. There's a lot of flexibility with these items. I think if you're Rain right now, you feel really good about your spot. We're probably going to see a relatively deep 3-2 roll down from Rain to try and find Echo 2, find the headliner Senna, and if she can hit those, she will be very, very strong for the rest of stage 3. However, we are seeing on this side now, this is what the Riven board has become. Berry was able to maintain that 5 loss streak as well, so she's also feeling quite strong. Does hit the Hodge as well. The items are pretty decent here, right? There's a lot of different ways to kill swords. Yeah, having the second tier is actually probably the hardest component to kill in this composition, but it's not impossible. You can play something like Sojin, Caitlyn, but you're definitely using one of those for the Hand of Justice. Not sure when Berry is going to be trying to turn this around and like snap this loss streak into a win streak. Pre-leveling to 6 right now isn't going to actually be looking to improve the board strength all that much just yet, though.
Do you think she just sacks until 3-5 and then just full sends? Like, ooh, blue buff slam. That's not what I would have expected. IE is the other open item now. But blue buff, that would not play on Riven. So that's looking at your secondary carry. But who is your secondary carry? Usually Zed is the only person you'd like to see that on. Maybe like Ezreal is another blue buff user. I'm interested by the blue buff slam. That's not something I would have expected whatsoever. And so curious to see where the spot goes. I feel like 3-5 is when we need to check back in with Berry. Because considering the pre-level, I don't think she's going to push on 3-2. I think she's going to wait. So we'll see what this pickup is. Martyr, too healthy. You have my sword as the options. Gargantuan Resolve is pretty good, but it's going to be Martyr. Yeah. And a Caitlyn is found.
Man, I'm very
I'm
confused
weird.
by this blue buff slam. I'm not sure if there's something that I'm missing
Yeah.
here, but it does feel like you could have very easily played around the Giant Slayer Hand of Justice,
baru jam
then
segini sih
use
gue
this
ngantuk
additional
ngantuk
sword
banget nih
to
guys ya.
start making Caitlyn
Gue satu
items.
match
I
aja
don't
deh.
necessarily feel like your item economy is any better by using both of those tiers at once too, because you're still going to be looking for some sort of healing item and then trying to find the cloaks for either Even Shroud or the QSS. I feel like the only thing that blue buff is really doing right now is adding a little bit more CC to your board, but because you are trying to slingshot your board at 3-2 rather than, or sorry, at 3-5, I don't know that the board strength here is adding to the overall shape of Biribiri's board in a meaningful way.
Vi with a blue buff, I don't think changed much as far as these fights are going, right? Like,
Yeah.
you could have just not slammed an item also. But Biribiri is going up against Soju and actually will find a win. It looks like, oh, maybe not. I spoke too soon. That's going to be Olaf running through this, making the win happen. Honestly, for Biribiri, a loss like that is probably just better. You're actually making just more gold and you're not losing too much HP from that fight. So I think she'll take that. And we saw on Soju's side, he is fully committed to going into an 80 flex line and he's playing around the Olaf. It's just very static on how we've expected people to play right now. Did she just roll like twice there?
She
Oh,
did
yeah,
roll.
harusnya
So
bakal
she-
I thought I saw
main
that.
tadi.
I was very confused.
Yeah, okay. I think on 3-5, we definitely need to watch
3-5, we
Biribiri.
need to go back.
Sementara
We need to go
bakal
back.
Yeah,
to
there's
Biribiri on
going to
3-5.
be some sort of strange transition going on. It seems now like Biribiri is trying to play something on level 6 instead. We'll see what she's cooking up instead, though. But right now, we're hopping on board with K3 Soju, one of those study group members who has dominated the field thus far. Yesterday, we got to see him play a really cool pentakill board, which eventually did end up with the 3-star Karthus, but I loved watching it because I think there's a lot of people in the field right now that are leaving pentakill on the table and are not trying to play it from tempo.
Yeah, a great thing that Soju's got here as well is we can see that Soju is playing around these two crit items, right? He's got Last Whisper and he's got Hand of Justice, and that's going alongside. He picked Jeweled Lotus when he realized that he has all these extra gloves, all these crit items, and Infinity Force also giving crit. And so by having these 3 different sources of crit in his itemization and then getting Jeweled Lotus, it also allows you to compound off
Kayaknya
this
dia
crit
ngambil
on
Caitlyn
whatever
deh, guys,
user
Soju.
you give it to. Ezreal will
Karena
use that
ngambil
so well,
Viego.
like 100% crit on his 3rd cast. Caitlyn can do it also. Just really, really solid
Bener
use
kan?
of itemization to go alongside with your augment selection. And so we see as we get on to the carousel here, trying to see what else gets picked up. Soju's going to end up grabbing a rod, which doesn't really fit into the 80 flex just yet, but we'll see where that rod ends up. As we see a cash out potential from Ripple, but instead he decides
Raise
to
the
raise the
stake.
stakes. So he's just going to go for Lost Streak because Biribiri goes to level 7. We are probably seeing a roll down over there to try and upgrade the board. And there it is, goes to level 7, fully rolling, trying to find the pickup of these ribbons. Ends up finding an upgraded Mordekaiser. And then from there, we also just have a pickup of that
Bruh.
Viego to go alongside with it. So Viego is going to hit the
Makanya
board,
dia
go
nawan.
alongside this Mordekaiser. Got those two together. We've got the Pentakill online. And then on top of that, now we do have another item slam on the ribbon. It is going to be a pickup of the Bloodthirster, but Blue Buff Viego is also not really the unit we would expect to see Blue Buff used on. So the Blue Buff is still giving me questions, Gangly.
I'm very confused by what we're seeing.
Yeah, it looks like Gangly's having a few connection issues, but we got this going through. I'm also very perplexed by this blue. I mean, it's still a good item overall to slam, but I just think that the way the item collation was, it didn't make a ton of sense. But now Biribiri's composition
nggak sih?
has kind of come
Stage
together. It
ini
makes a
tuh
lot of
bentuk
sense.
kepala.
It's exactly what we kind of expect out of this board. And you early on had the ribbon, and there we go. That's exactly what she was looking for, trying to find that ribbon headliner because already on 6 ribbons. So finding that now, Biribiri has spiked 3-6. It's maybe a little later than she actually thought she could because of the greed going to 7 on 3-5, but still hitting a 3-star 3-cost pre-stage 4 is such an incredible pickup for Biribiri. And it's going alongside having the edgelords and the pentakill already on the board, right? A pair of Viego, so just finding the Viego too. This board is really ready to spike even harder, and she can take it to level 8 as quick as possible. Should be a great way to win streak, because you look on the other side and people are still playing their 1-cost headliners as filler for now, and so it is just going to be that Jinx
Ini
going
biri-biri
through.
defend dia bintang
Not able to
3
find
kurang
much
1
more,
item lagi.
and
Kayaknya dia
Biri
bakal
is going to
bikin
take that win.
PSS.
Now she's stable.
Ini sih
She's gonna
menurut
win
gue
streak
udah
for a while.
aman
We
sih
need
top
to take
4
a
sih
look at the
biri-biri
rest
sih
of
harusnya
these
ya.
boards and see what people
Dengan
are
board
on.
dia sekuat
You
itu
know,
dia top
Soju
4
still
sih
on
ya.
his Olaf. Kaiwing still on his Olaf. A lot of people
Ya
still
Soju
just
dia
playing
masih
around their
galau, dia mau
one-cost
main
headliner.
apa guys?
You see Soju of course
Kayaknya
going
dia
into
bakal
maybe
main
flex line, but he
penta, tapi
stayed on level
kelihatannya
6.
penta ada
So
yang
look to
nabrak
push to
dia,
level
makanya dia
7
lagi
when it comes
galau.
to 3-7 here. Maybe 4-1, 4-2. He can start to even try and go for a fast 8, considering he saved a good amount of HP, but it does feel like some amount of rolling on 7 is going to need to happen. We see him push 7 on 3-7 here, and we'll see what he gets off of neutrals. So the big thing to look forward to as well for Soju's board is we talked about the Jeweled Lotus and how he's got a couple of different options to go with. And he's also angling for Pentakill. And this is something that we saw Soju do in the meantime, right? We had seen Soju play around Pentakill yesterday. He found a first place around a line that hasn't been so popular. And we heard Weijin talk about it at the start of the day, right? Weijin was saying, hey, Pentakill playing around Karthus and playing around the disco is not something that we really have done too much because it has not been so good. It's not been so consistent. You have to hit the specific forecast for it to work out. But Soju has been ready to play to that line because he'll angle for it. And then we saw him item carry something like a Zed when he hits it and econ back up before rolling again and trying to find those pentakill units. So if Soju can find a Viego, if he can find that Karthus, he can try and put something together, and he can use something like Zeta or Ezreal to fill the gaps in the meantime, and either completely try and go for the AD flex line, or he just tries to play into the pentakill if he hits it, and it keeps him open to kind of high rolling, quote unquote, into pentakill or not. As we see, Biri, of course, just going to be dominant right now through this stage. We kind of expect her to just full win streak. Kaiwing has swapped up to Ergot, so he has found that way to upgrade, but it hasn't been a full pivot into what the late game board would be. These level 7 boards are on the transition period where they find a 3 cost and they still are able to make a strong board around it, whereas they're not able to actually fully go to the 4 cost, whereas Biri is on her capped comp playing around this Riven. Everyone else is playing a filler unit trying to make it to level 8. And Prestivan, one of our first players to reach that level 8, rushing to it on 4-2, but not a lot of gold to roll down. And he doesn't find a carry to go with this Death Cap and this Hand of Justice. And so it's not going to be an incredibly strong board just yet for Prestivan. He's in the middle, and he's going to lose quite a few rounds here unless he can string something together. But he is broke with nothing good on the board.
Hello, I'm gonna step in here for a moment for Gangly until he can jump back in. But yeah, it's I want to say a really rough spot right now for Precedent. Dead broke, went 8, and you kind of have to wonder, you know, how he's gonna be able to try to pull this back because he doesn't really even have gold to roll, right? Like there's a second Zed in shop, but at the same time, if he doesn't start stringing together some wins, like he's gonna be dropping health like crazy with basically a full 1-star board, no real carry. This naked spatula, you know, sitting on stage 4, it is a tough spot to be in. But at least he runs into Ripple, who's obviously, you know, on the raise the stakes. So this is going to give him a bit of a free round and hopefully allow him to stabilize somewhat.
Yeah, and that's the big thing to look at with Ripple too, is I believe he's cashing out right after this. And of course he can't raise the stake. So we need to jump over to Ripple and see what he can get here. The cash out, bunch of orbs coming through. Get a Radiant item. Ooh, so this is exactly the cash out that Setsi got last time. Radiant item, full completed item, no gold. And so Ripple's gonna have to try and put together a board with this that can stabilize when a lot of people in the lobby are getting quite a bit stronger, specifically someone like Biri, who was already been on that 3-star Riven.
Yeah, I mean, he's digging so hard because he wants a carry headliner, I think, right? But now I think he needs to buy this Zac. So he's going to put in the Zac. At least he has a carry for that Radiant item, but all 1-stars besides that, you know, his board is pretty weak. He does have good items, but it's going to be tough. You know, if he can't actually get this Ezreal upgraded, he has a pair of Ezreals, but he's even struggling to decide what he wants to actually buy here. So he's not slamming his items in, and he's going to take more damage as a result. Just now is he actually getting those 3 items in on the Ezreal, and we'll see if he can kill much, but he's going to be on 1 life here.
Yeah, this was a really bad transition from Ripple, right? So the initial part of it was fine because he low rolled what he needed from his cash out, right? He got
Biasa
some
dia
very
mesti
strong items, but he
champion
needed gold
sekali sih
to
buat
actually
ngalahin
turn this into a
Scott.
real board. And then from there, he got everything on the board, but then not getting the items out, he wasn't able to kill as many units. And there was certainly a world where Ezreal could carry this fight if he had full items from the very beginning. The positioning ended up rough as well. Ezreal jumped all the way to that back line and gets Urgot turning on him. So I think Ripple, in a spot where that was a board he kind of wanted to see and could have beaten, and there are other boards that are going to be a lot tougher for him to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough thing, right? And we've seen this a few times. It is just so hard when you have a clear line in mind when you're playing Raise the Stakes. You're like, okay, this is what I'm going to get. This is what I'm going to go for. And then none of that happens. And now your entire plan has to go out the window. You have to instantly figure out, what you want to go for. If you're not just seeing that headliner that you want immediately, you have to realize, okay, when do I need to settle? When do I need to actually just buy something else? And sometimes at that point you've rolled in so far that you don't actually have gold to upgrade the rest of your board, and you're in these really, really tough spots. And that's kind of, I think, where he found himself here. As you said, very likely was hoping for a lot more gold, being able to actually, slingshot himself into a strong board that way. The Radiant item only helps if you have good carriers for it. He did get that Bruiser Zac headliner, and if he can get the Ezreal too, then maybe he can start to stabilize. But Ripple could be out of there in a hurry. We saw it happen to Setsuko last game. We saw it happen to Appies when he kind of failed his transition yesterday. So it's definitely not an easy thing to master.
Yeah, I mean, it's the rough part, right? It's kind of the low roll that you can get on the Raise the Stakes is where you end up with a cash out that doesn't work for your spot, and you've sacrificed all that HP.
Really
and we see it happening to Ripple, right? Soju did find the Pentakill line. He found the Viego to go with the items that he was setting up for. And now Ripple loses because he cannot compete with these boards that are so incredibly strong. And now he's got 10 gold to work with. Let's see what he can find. Nothing? All right, that's expected.
Brutal. I mean, he gets 4 Bruiser, but man, you need upgraded carries. He's got all these items on the Zed and the Ezreal. Yuck. That's rough. There's just, I mean, it's not even like you can sell a pair and roll. You just have to pray that you somehow win this next round, and then maybe with the PvE phase you get enough gold to hit Ezreal Zed. Because if he actually had upgraded Ezreal and Zed, the board's not bad at all, right? And he's gonna get additional cash outs. Maybe there's some world in which he can stabilize. He's fighting the Senna reroller before they actually hit a Senna 3, so that is pretty lucky, but I'm not certain that's going to be enough. It may be because it is just a Kali 1 and Senna 2, so I think this is actually a bit of a bailout, getting one of the best possible rounds you could get, and we'll see if it's going to be enough, because the Zac looks like it should be able to push through here. He will survive, gets the PvE round. That is actually so big, because this game is still comebackable. It is a very difficult situation, but you never know.
Bro,
That's right, Ripple might be back, and so am I. It's Treasure Dragon.
He's back, baby.
The Treasure Armory online. Ripple does get a little bit of an influx of gold. He can't, here's the thing, he can't roll his Treasure Armory all too much, right? Because he needs every bit of gold he can get to try and upgrade those units. However, he now has a little bit of redundancy, I would say, with the double red buff on his backline. I mean, whether or not this is actually enough for him to hit his units is also left to be said. I'm not really convinced that he's gonna have any of the resources required to win the next fight. He's got one more chance.
What do you guys think though? So I almost, to play devil's advocate, argue the other side where he should have rolled, because you can get treasure armories where it's just gold, right? And I feel like that is the bailout from this spot. He doesn't need more items. What's he gonna do? Slam those items onto like a level 1 Lucian? It feels kind of rough. Like maybe you roll once or twice and get something.
It is tough, right? Because there was a little gold in that one, so he's like, oh, okay, I have some gold, I can get a little more, versus you could roll and it's just only items, and then you roll and it's only items, and you roll, and like, I think it's more common
either way if you don't get full gold. That's my question.
Maybe, right? But I do think that, okay, he's on a pair of Ezreals, so getting, essentially, it was what, 8 gold, getting 4 shot looks to actually match that Ezreal is probably worth trying for, because you just get that one upgrade, considering you went to 4 Bruiser and you have this Zac with really great items, like that's probably enough for you to be stable for a couple more rounds. And I think that is worthwhile in consideration to just take that. And we see Ripple might even be able to win on this Ezreal 1. It's very close. The Zac stun's coming through. Oh, they stopped the cast from the Karthus, and so Ripple finds a kill, and Robin goes down. So Ripple has at least evaded the 8th place.
Wow, the all-star of that fight actually has to be the Hextech Gunblade on the Zed. The Akali was on both the Lucian and the Ezreal, but because of the healing coming through from the Gunblade, yeah, he was able to keep both of those units alive, survives one more round, and now, like you're saying, has the Ezreal 2. Ripple is looking like he's in a pretty decent spot. I don't know.
I don't know about decent. Yeah.
We've seen boards capped so high that like hitting Zed to Ezreal 2 in of itself is not enough. The thing is, he has a really strong front line, and you have a lot of boards that are trying to play front to
And look
back,
at his
right?
items. He carries
Yeah.
basically, plus an insanely strong front line with 4 bruiser and a radiant item on his Zac. Like this is comebackable, and he's even got metabolic booster. So if he actually wins, throughout the next handful of rounds, like he's gonna be healthy enough that he could potentially have 2 lives.
Honestly, the Zac's kind of a beast too. Like all the AP he's getting is actually healing so much. He's doing a lot of damage. The CC as well. Like this board is actually looking a hell of a lot better than I think we initially would have thought. I think it's all coming together entirely. And as you said, metabolic is actually a really good call out here because he's just a couple fights away from being 2 lives instead of 1, right? And that's really, really important as we get to this late game, especially when you're just trying to, at this point, maybe just outlive Prestivan, outlive Kaiwing, and see how far you can take it. The board still has a ways to cap. Maybe you can go for first, but it's still a much better spot. And Ripple was just
Jadi
on the
dia itu
brink,
damage
but finding
orang
that
satu,
Ezreal
orang
living
dua
one
tuh.
more fight was massive.
Kalinya
Soju
juga
once
orang
again
satu.
on this pentakill line too, right? We saw it yesterday. I know on the whole it was not super successful in day 1, but I think Soju's kind of playing it with similar conditions. He's playing it from ahead, knowing my goal is not to play for first right now. My goal is to outlast the low rollers in my lobby by playing high tempo, going into this very cheap, relatively speaking, board
Temponya
on level
bener-bener
8. And if I can
orang-orang
have
di sini.
enough HP ahead of the next person below me, then I might be able to squeeze out a 4th place here. I really love to see it.
I mean, it's basically the same line he played into the Predators for
Kiana.
yesterday. Obviously, this
Exactly,
is a
yeah.
game because he
It's
didn't
good,
hit
yeah.
that. But Olaf is a really strong item holder for a lot of these physical damage lines. And I think Soju, from the play that I've seen from him so far in this event, he is just really favoring playing uncontested lines, right? Like there's so many people playing, towards these Ezreals and Caitlyn's and things like that. He's playing more towards pentakill, I think, because he's saying no one is clicking Viego, right? Like in a lot of these cases, he's feeling somewhat uncontested. So I think he's more comfortable playing that line, as you say, keep your health high, try to play a stable board. But it does always make you nervous when some of the people that are really low on health are getting some strong boards, right? And I think that is a bit of the case in this game. Like Prestivan, wouldn't necessarily be a free
dong,
win
tes
by any
sepeda
means for
dong.
Soju. We
Belain
know
Ezreal
that
dong.
Ripple obviously is healing up. He's on a 4-win streak now, and if he can get to level 9 with his board and start to add in extra luxury units, like he could get first, unironically, in this one.
Yeah, Prestivan's board, he's kind of playing the similar line. The difference, though, is that he's playing 30 HP down. And that's what we're saying. It's all about playing from tempo, right? Because the board is certainly not weak. You have 7 pentakill online with this Viego. However, it's very rare that we see these vertical pentakill boards win out entirely. There's always going to be someone that's capping a very, very high. And until you get that Yorick 2 online, there may be a board that can actually take it out. However, this does not seem to be one of those. The Kale 2 is still on the board for degree. Mordekaiser 2, most of the time you're really relying. Oh my goodness, wait a second. Diego's just trapped on the Mord 2.
Mord is
Holy
by the
cow.
way. If you didn't know, Gangly, Mord is the best unit in the game. But the thing that's really
my
tough for
goodness.
Degree is he's actually so contested on those Mordekaisers that he's going to kind of hit that
Ripple
wall.
must
A lot of these other
anymore.
boards are going to keep capping out. But yeah, that is one little chunk of Mordekaisers back in the pool that Degree can try and hunt him down, right? Soju's the other person contesting, but Degree could hit, actually. That is a good point. He did just put 3 back in the pool, so something to watch out for.
This is also really nice. So Ripple just got another cash out, and it's at the 11 gold cash out, I believe, that you can get Thieves Gloves. And he did hit a Thieves Gloves, which always feels really nice when you have something like an Alawi that's naked. They can just kind of slap that on. Like his itemization is so good. After this next PvE phase, he's likely going to get a 3rd item for his Lucian. You can see he's holding gold, so he's thinking, you know what? I'm stable. I can go to 9. I actually agree. There's basically nothing for him to roll for at 8 anyway. So like in his position, I would rather die with gold than be rolling forever at 8. Because if you go 9 and you're rolling there, like you can definitely get a first place from this spot. It is definitely winnable. But he did take a
also
loss, and
lost
he's
the
really
last
low.
fight. Yeah, he lost the last fight, but because of metabolic, he had been able to heal outside of that 1 life range, and now back to 1 life range.
Di
But
6-1
he has
bakal
held
banyak yang
on, and he's
meninggal,
now
guys.
in a spot where a lot of other players are on a single life, and he can hold on for some extra placements. But There's a good call out. There's nothing more to roll for. If he goes to 9, Ripple can start to actually look for that cap out to win the game.
Wing sitting at 1 life left for this fight. But however, I want to call out the fact that Wing is playing around the Akali, which is an 80 flex variation that is maybe not as popular, but certainly can be strong. We saw Replay go first with it yesterday. Right now, I think Wing's trying to determine whether or not they want to actually play it. They are completely broke, so it's very hard to transition out of it. But they're one fight away from this Heartsteel cash out, which might be able to push them over the edge. But with only 1 life left, you run into something like the Senna reroller, and you have all these frontline units, and it's going to feel really, really tough to win.
All right, taking a look.
Si
Wing and
Taiwan nggak
Ripple
mungkin
both on
masukin
1 life. We got
kopi
the
nggak
split
sih?
screen to see where their fights go.
Siapa yang mau diganti?
Ripple going up against, it looks like an 80 flex board. That is going to be Biri. That is going to be the Riven that he's trying to deal with over there. Whereas Degrees board is fighting up against Wing, and Wing just has to get through the Mordekaiser, and he does. So that should be the fight wing for Wing. Whereas on the other side, the Riven is just too much for Ripple. Not able to get through. She's still full health. Gets to the backline, and Ripple, it's going to be a 1v1 Zed versus Riven. Zed, does he have the damage? He does not, and Ripple goes down. Ripple, after all of that work, fighting his way back. Where will the placement land as Degree took a fight loss? Wing lives, and Ripple goes out in 6th.
Man, that is rough, because I think Ripple was 1 round away from being able to go 9. You know, 2 rounds away from being able to go 9 with a decent amount of gold. And I felt like with the positioning, he had a good shot against the Riven, because Riven was opposite side. But I think it was a Viego that got to the backline and just instantly killed his Ezreal too. Like, his Ezreal did nothing, and it even had healing, right? Like, it had a Hodge on it. So I was pretty shocked to see it die when it was opposite side of the Riven that early on. But with the Ezreal going down, you just don't have enough to push through these really tanky units like that Riven.
Wing did get the cash out from that last fight. Now it's going to be up against Soju's board. Soju, I believe, not locked in for top 4 yet, right? We still got 5 players left. Hopefully, that HP lead that he was able to earn early on in the fight is going to be enough. But, oh my goodness, on the left-hand side, Degree
Oh enggak,
gonna
Soju
take a
mati.
very big loss on that. Is it
Ngering
gonna be
Soju top
enough
4,
to,
hoki
scrape out a
anjing.
4th, though? It's
No.
not.
Soju
Degree
holds
goes
on to that
down.
4th.
Gila,
And that's
hoki
exactly what
banget.
Soju was playing for, though, right? That is the line. You play high tempo, you play around the Olaf. We've seen his
Temponya
study group. We
menggila
saw
banget,
Spencer
guys.
do it again yesterday as well. This is something that their study group
Giri-giri
has
sih kuat
prepped,
banget.
saying there are people who are leaving
Seperti
placements
yang
on the
gua
table
bilang.
because they only want to play for these high cap boards. But if you're better at playing tempo, better at playing from ahead, Soju's been able to consistently find spots where he can comfortably either bleed out into a 4th or, like we
Karena
saw
pada main
yesterday,
santai, nggak
high
main-
roll himself into a 1st.
Main cepat
All
tapi
right,
nggak
well, this
buru-buru
Riven
gitu
has
loh.
been the Grim Reaper, and now Rain is the one in the sights. And we've got Riven trying to dash through to get to the Senna. It's reroll v reroll, lab v lab. But now the Ari taking out the Riven. The single target is there. It's up to Viego, but he gets 1 more cast. And Biri is going to claim another victim. Rain got 2nd in the first game, 3rd in this one. Good start from Rain Plosion, but Biri, what a beautiful game this has been overall. I love the way that she did this. We talked about having the pair of Rivens at the start, get heroic, just pop it to be able to get that extra Riven. But then playing Lost Streak from there was an insane choice in my eyes, and she turned it into an amazing level 7 roll down on 3-5.
Yeah, I mean, it really worked out for. And the thing about this is, you know, when you're playing against these Riven reroll comps, you're always so hyper focused on the Riven. The Riven actually got burst down by what was a true damage Ahri on the other side, but it almost didn't even matter because Caitlyn is a real threat. Like, look at the Caitlyn items at this point in the game with full 8-bit stacks. Plus, you have a Viego that is also going to be putting out some decent damage. It's obviously not the super high roll version where you have 8-bit stat on the Viego, then it's really crazy. But Caitlyn can sometimes late in the game with full stacks be out damaging your Riven and is really a threat that makes this comp cap out high and be able to go for those first place.
Yeah, and the big thing we looked at in that fight too was the value of Martyr once you have this late stage and 9 units on the board. The healing that comes through is massive, as Riven has made her way to the back line and is chunking through all of these backliners, making her way down the line all the way to the Lucian. And the fight is not even close. The positioning perfect. The Riven just chopping them up.
Oke,
And
teman-teman,
Biri is
dan
going to
minta
take
maaf
the win
dan gue
over
sudah harus
Kaiwing.
offline.
I loved
Gue
this
tadinya
game
rencana
from
kan mau
Biri.
live
This one was
stream nyantai
fantastic to
gitu ya,
watch.
kuat gitu
It's
gue.
all started with
Ternyata
that
Ken Budi
stage
udah kuat,
2
guys.
lesser champion
Yang segini Ken
duplicator
gue nggak
on
kuat
the
hasilnya,
Riven that
guys.
was most
Waktu
likely
dulu.
dropped from the orb. Really
Thank you
creative
semuanya
play
teman-teman
from
sudah
Biri, a
menonton.
line that I think a
Sampai
lot of
berjumpa
players
lagi
may
besok.
not always be taking.
See you
Great stuff to
later,
Biri.
bye-bye. Takutnya gue tumbang.
Well deserved first place.
Yep, and I think it's so strong when you can